Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Air Combat Sim Podcast. This episode we will be discussing DCS Liberation Campaign. It's a dynamic campaign, a turn-based campaign that you can run with a third-party app and generates missions for you, and we'll get into detail more about that in a minute. Today we have Baltic Dragon with us. How you doing, Baltic?
Hey guys, doing fine. I'm on holidays now, which means I have less time. Much less time than I normally have, which is kind of funny. And I also have to admit, just off the bat, that I haven't played the Liberation campaign. I've heard about it, heard good things, but I don't know too much about it. So my questions that will follow might be from a point of view of someone who really, they might sound naive or stupid to people that have played it already, but might be useful for others. I don't know.
Awesome. Yeah, I think any question you have would probably benefit new people to Liberation as well, so that'll be good. And our guest is Dan. Dan, how you doing? Dan works on the Liberation team. How's it going, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us. What specifically is your role on the team?
Pretty much same as everyone else that does this. We all just sort of pitch in with the parts that interest us. I'm one of the ones that has been more active and with the project a bit longer than a lot of the people that are currently active. But we all do pretty much the same thing.
Very cool. Kind of like just a collaborative effort. Everybody does what they want to do and pitches in.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's cool. Maybe you can give us a brief overview of what Liberation is, so our listeners can get a better understanding.
Yeah, so it's a dynamic campaign. Anyone that has played Falcon BMS knows exactly what that is. So you start your campaign and you get a theater of combat where you have several bases that you own. You have a set of resources to spend. The enemy has the same things. There's SAMs all over the map. There's vehicle targets. There's ships. There's all kinds of things. And it's unlike BMS, it is turn-based. So at the start of each turn, you plan all of your missions, and you pick an aircraft to fly, and you hit go, and it generates a mission for you. And whatever you do in that mission, whether you kill a SAM, your ground forces capture a base, all of that is then reflected back into the campaign so that you can continue next turn. And when I say all of that, there's some pretty big caveats there. We track kills basically, and not much else.
Do you track deaths as well, but only from kills, or just like if I crash a plane, I lose that resource moving forward, correct?
Correct. So yeah, it's wrong to say that we track kills. We do track deaths. It doesn't really matter how it arises.
Gotcha. I know in my own experience, I started playing Liberation, I want to say, trying to think of the version number. It had to have been 1 something, or just prior to 1. But there's little caveats where, like, I didn't realize until more recent, you don't have to actually land the plane. You can end it at any time. That's more what you mean. You track very limited things, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Awesome. Where was this something that you guys started, or was this started by somebody else originally?
It was originally a different author. I think Shadow Prince is the call sign. Copa, the other main developer, picked it up. I don't know exactly when. I think it was sometime early last year, after it had sort of stagnated, as far as I know. I wasn't involved then, so I don't really know the history here. But as I understand it, 1.0 was a very different game. It sort of just generated. It was a lot more like the quick mission generator that's already in DCS. It had some persistent behavior to it, but it would sort of only generate the local area for one operation each time. So you would either have a bombing mission, and that was the entire mission, or you would have a CAS mission, and that was the whole thing.
I see.
Whereas when Copa took over, I think the first thing that he did was reorganize that such that the entire theater is playing and it's more freeform.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah, I guess I didn't play it back then. I had heard about it, and I think I might have tried it once, but the UI bothered me enough to make me stop playing it at the time.
I think that was redone around the same time, yeah.
Let me jump in then. If we're talking about the campaigns, so you're free to choose any map you like, and there are some preset campaigns or let's say scenarios that you can jump into. How does it work?
Okay. There are only preset campaigns, but you have quite a few variables that you can tune. So you go into the mission editor like you would for any other type of mission, and you follow a set of guidelines on how to set it up. You turn some bases blue, you plop down some Patriots or some SA-10s or some SA-3s, you add a few units to define some paths, and then you save that, and we import that mission and look at how it's structured, and we use that to generate the campaign. So the overall shape and layout of the campaign comes predefined, but you can choose your faction, your coalition of units, and what you have available, as well as tune the economy for the income rates or the starting budget, or quite a few other things that I'm kind of blanking on at the moment, but there's quite a few things that you can do to customize the campaign.
The other thing is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but this is just from me kind of looking into it for my own usage. You use the mission editor in DCS. You define the blue bases, you define the red bases, you add units and a pathing that you want the units to push on the front lines between bases, right?
Yep.
And the units themselves, specific unit types are what gets generated at runtime. So you would define, like you said, an SA3. Well, that's going to be like an SA3 site. It might have multiple units. It might have just a few. It's all generated at runtime, not defined within the mission itself, other than, hey, there is a SAM site of this type here. Use this.
That's mostly correct. The difference is that it may not necessarily be an SA3. It will be some sort of medium range SAM.
But you guys say like an SA3 means this, and SA2 means this, right?
Yeah, because you might change out the faction that you're playing against. They might not have access to the SA3. You might be playing against a US faction, and it'll get replaced with it downgrades to a low range SAM at that point. You're probably fighting an Avenger. The US factions just don't have any medium range SAMs.
And then on top of that, when it generates the mission, the initial generation of the mission of the campaign, every time you generate it, it could be different because you have some randomness built into the generation, right?
Correct. Yeah. Since the exact SAMs that you're up against and all of the vehicle groups that spawn, it might be armor this time. It might be a group of BTRs next time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I really like that because that adds a lot of replayability to the same type of mission over and over again.
Yeah. Some of it's good. Some of it can lead to undesirable behavior because if you expect an SA2 to spawn so that you have coverage of a certain area and instead you get an SA3, it's quite a bit less coverage. So you might have a campaign that was designed to have one SAM guarding an area that actually has coverage of nothing.
And how about your side? So you say you have a budget that you can spend, but this time if you buy units, you can buy specific units and you have everything you bought, or it's also somehow more random for your faction?
There's sort of two things going on here. There's the targets that are in the theater, which are going to be static objectives. They don't move around, and for the most part, you don't buy those. Those are all spawned at the beginning of the game. You can go and tweak the armor composition for those static units. I don't think many people really do, since they don't move around. They don't accomplish as much. They're mostly just there as targets. The money gets spent on buying aircraft and buying units that are on the front line, or replacing a SAM after you capture a base.
Yeah, like repairing base assets and stuff like that. Yeah, so the idea is that like you start out with 500 million, the enemy starts off with 500 million, and you can spend that on air to ground assets, air to air assets, and then also in between base capturing. So if you have a base at the south and they have one at the north, there's this front line that's generated in between, and it's just this pathing that the AI will take to move up to the base to the north from the south. And your role is to go in and destroy that southern base or that northern base, and then as your assets from the front line move up, if they get to the northern base, it gets captured. Correct?
Yeah. I think there's like a 2 kilometer radius around each base. This is defined by DCS, not us. There is actually a built-in base capture mechanic, and if you have
Interesting.
cleared the enemy base of enemy units and you move one friendly ground unit in, it'll flip sides, and we catch that event, and that is how we note the base capture, which can be
Cool.
kind of annoying because it can just be one BTR hiding in an aircraft shelter that will stop the base from being captured. But it's what we do right now.
Or a tree.
Exactly.
I had one dynamic campaign. No, actually, the one I'm running now for my Twitch stream. The initial generation, it was on Persian Gulf. There was like four or six boats off the coast, and 2 of them generated on land in a building. That was very, very frustrating.
Yeah. It's easier to avoid than it used to be back when all of the locations were completely random, but it's still up to the campaign designer to put them in the right spot, and sometimes we screw up.
It was pretty funny.
So you say that there are, let's say I have a bunch of tanks and BTRs going north towards enemy base. Then if I'm not there in my aircraft, then the AI will take care of the whole fighting sequence. And my question is there a point from player's perspective to, let's say, buy BTRs instead of just Abrams or something like that?
This is where we kind of run into some of the limitations of DCS's ground war system. As far as we've been able to tell, there's not much reason to use anything other than tanks. They just are going to be better at everything. We tried to round some of that out. There's also infantry that spawns. You don't have to buy the infantry. It's just there. And it'll, they'll have man pads, so they can actually contribute to protecting the front line there, and they will only spawn with APCs and IFVs. So there's some motivation to buy things other than tanks.
That's pretty cool. I didn't actually realize that. I actually turned that off for performance reasons. But I usually run pretty heavy missions, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much the infantry contributes to that, because I never actually turned that one off. The smoke, certainly.
The smoke, yeah.
The smoke and it'll try to regenerate the wrecks from previous missions as well, and that can be really heavy.
Sure.
But every mission runs pretty heavy. There's just a lot going on.
And for the people listening that don't understand what we're talking about here for the smoke, when DCS Liberation defines where the front line is for that specific mission, there is what's the smoke called? It's just a static smoke plume that you get in the DCS mission editor. You guys kind of lay those out at random, I'm assuming, across that front line, just so there's a visual reference from the air where a battle is going on, right?
Well, and it looks really cool.
It does look cool. I agree.
I hate having to turn it off, but it does really hurt on FPS.
Yeah. You can turn it down though, right?
I believe you can now. Yeah, I think that was a recent addition.
Awesome. What are some of the bigger problems you guys have run into over the time that you've been on this team?
I'd say the thing that we struggle with most is just trying to get the behavior that we want out of the in-game AI. DCS does a really, really, really good job with highly scripted behavior. It does not do a very good job with autonomy. And since we are generating these rather than curating these, we need the AI to have a lot more autonomy than they do. This is why, like, Baltic Dragons campaigns, you can't really tell that the AI has that many problems because they are scripted down to the second to have the AI do exactly what you need them to.
I can certainly say how many problems there are by scripting it. It's just crazy.
Yes, but you have dealt with all those problems, so no one else has to see them.
Exactly.
And that takes you a ton of time, and it's just not a thing that we are capable of doing automatically. You do that by hand. Whereas we have to do something programmatically, which is a lot tougher. There's no way to define, as far as I can tell, there's no way to define a no-fly zone. So there's no way to keep the AI from going a place that they shouldn't. There are tasks like search and engage along your route, and that it's not actually along the route, it's just within a certain distance of where they are at that time. So if they are flying along a flight path and you want them to engage everything within 20 nautical miles of that, well, they're going to go 20 nautical miles, attack that target, and then find another thing 20 nautical miles from where they currently are, and they can just wander all over the map.
I see.
It doesn't happen too often because they do have to actually find the target. So it mostly works, but there are some quirks where you'll see your CAS aircraft run off and destroy an entire base.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always found the AI to be a little bit wonky in what they can see.
And how do you deal with those problems in between the updates? Because they also, something that used to work before sometimes stops working. Like, I don't know, the seed mission comes to mind, where it's sometimes very unreliable with the AI. So you have to do a lot of tweaking after each major update.
I would say that if we encounter those problems often, we don't know, because we're not going to really notice those problems until they are reported in a mission or one of us encounters them. And it just does take a lot of playtime to actually see and you have to be watching the AI aircraft in order to catch those problems. And you're usually busy flying your own jet, trying not to get shot down. So you may not notice those things, I think is probably going to be the issue.
Yeah, again, that's the difference. That's the difference with the scripted campaigns, where you rely on AI to do something to push the campaign forward, as opposed to just it being part of a much larger picture, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the AI, one of the community questions was from Whiskey Actual. He said that and I'm just saying what he has here. I don't actually know what it is, but he said the XSAF AI is quite unique. And he was wondering if you guys were open to collaboration. Is maybe not specifically about the AI in question, but as far as collaboration goes, do you guys accept like pull requests and external input from the community?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Pull requests are actually probably how most of my time gets spent on Liberation lately. But it's the bug tracker's open. It's also a form of our roadmap, and we take pull requests, and we have also collaborated with other groups, in particular Skynet, the IADS system. We've certainly talked with the guy that runs that.
I love that system.
It's really cool.
I hate that system because the DCS AI doesn't know how to do anything with it, though.
Yeah, that part is unfortunate. The seed aircraft in Liberation definitely don't handle that well, because if it's not emitting, they can't find it, and it's intentionally not emitting. So
I don't even think they attack it once it emits. Like I've had a few campaigns that I've played by myself where I had Skynet on and the seed would go in and it would be emitting, but they wouldn't do anything for some reason. So I'm not sure what the deal is there. So I usually turn it off if it's a single player campaign for myself, but I do love it. And, when I do multiplayer stuff, definitely turn it back on.
It can help with performance too, just because it turns off so many units.
Right. Everything's not in red alert mode right at the beginning.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think here is, if I may, on AI, I think indeed they're working on some kind of making the AI more autonomous than they are now. Like, for instance, allowing them not to go into fray and just turn tail and flee if there's too many enemy units, etc. I don't know how advanced it is and how far they've gone with it, but that will probably add another new interesting layer, because, well, the player will have to think more carefully about what he chooses, what he buys, what he sends, and if it's overwhelmed or outnumbered by the enemy, then he may not achieve any of the goals. So that might be interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I actually find that the combat AI, like anytime I'm doing something non-cooperative with the AI, that usually works out quite well, I think, especially CAS. The AI is really, really good at CAS. You give them Mavericks or AP Quiz, and they have no problem. It's all the cooperative interactions with the AI that are where I find things struggle. Like just trying to taxi near the AI, trying to use the same airfield as the AI, because as best as I can tell, they don't follow the same air traffic control rules that the players try to. Even if you
Right.
call in your landing, they might just land on top of you.
Hmm.
It's all those kinds of things
I
where,
find the way that they taxi to be incredibly annoying.
and it's really slow. Like they're, I think this has gotten better, but there were a few months ago, there were definitely problems, especially on the Syria map, which was a work in progress at the time. It's expected,
Hmm.
but only a single aircraft could taxi at any airport at any time. So
Yeah.
one aircraft would start taxiing, and until it was in the air, another one could not begin taxiing. So it took an hour to sortie
Yeah.
just a package or two
That
out of
that
that.
was some of the frustration when I actually first started on Syria with Liberation was I forget what the airfield is. It's one of the northern ones, but it only has the runway. It doesn't have like a taxiway,
Hmm.
and so I would put up some AI bar cap, and they would fly up one at a time in like 2 to 4 minute intervals at takeoff. So like while one goes up to go, hold the airspace, he's getting clobbered by an incoming like 4 MiG-29s because he has no backup because it's 4 minute intervals between takeoffs because they're
Yeah.
all back taxiing rather than taking a taxiway. It's just, and realistic or not, that was just always a frustrating thing. So like I had to adapt my play style to around that, which
Yeah.
was a little bit annoying, but
And well, it may be realistic behavior for them to have to back taxi, but they do it in pairs. Most of those airfields have a turnaround location when they
yep,
do have to back
agreed,
taxi, and they
agreed.
don't always do that.
Hmm.
And you probably just wouldn't sortie as many flights out of that airfield. You'd use
Yes,
a bigger airbase to
a
do
bigger
that,
airfield. Yep,
and
yep.
Liberation just doesn't really take that into account.
Right,
Um,
right.
Can you set some of your flights already in the air so to avoid that kind of problem?
yes, you do have control over the start type of the aircraft, and this is one of the ways that I get around this problem. Is you can just say, hey, just runway start everybody, or just air
Oh,
start
interesting.
everybody, and that it's really unfortunate because runway start does not work for delayed flights in multiplayer, and for some reason only in multiplayer.
Yes.
So the common fix for performance of run a dedicated server on the same machine and connect to it, it'll like double your FPS just because your render loop is no longer tied to the AI, and doing that means that runway starts no longer work. So you have to air start everybody.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's frustrating. There is a bug open. ED knows about it. It's just got to get to it.
So let's go down that path. Have you guys had much interaction with the ED staff in helping you guys deal with issues, or you guys suggesting things to them to fix or whatever?
None beyond what every other player is doing. We file bugs, we file feature requests. As far as I know, we get no special treatment. I haven't had any direct conversations with any of them beyond
Gotcha.
bug discussion.
What do you guys have vision wise for the future? Is there anything that you guys want to happen sooner rather than later, or things that you guys want to happen but require some sort of thing from ED to occur first? Or
Um, I think there's two questions there. One was just general project direction, and the other is
Mhm.
what do I want ED to do to open some doors for
Sure.
us?
Yeah.
I'll take the first one of those first. General driving uh, direction has always sort of been I want to play BMS, but I want to fly more than just the F-16. And you can fly more than the F-16 in BMS, but they're all an F-16 on the inside, basically.
Correct.
And that's always sort of been at least my motivational direction. Well, we're never going to be that good, but I hope we can get close. So that I think we've gotten a lot of the way there, but things like starting the mission partway through, like BMS does, where you can just sort of drop in any aircraft at any time.
Hmm.
That I don't see us being able to do because it requires you to simulate what's going on
Right.
in the mission, and as far as I can tell, the AI in DCS will spawn with 0 SA. So if you try to start a mission with an aircraft like over the target about to begin its attack run, it's not going to go well.
Gotcha. So ED obviously is coming out with their own dynamic campaign at some point.
Yeah.
We don't know when, but they're obviously actively working on it. And they talk about it here and there. Do you see your efforts going into making that better eventually, or is that, depending on what they do, kind of a cutoff for you guys?
For me personally, the moment they hit parity, I'm done working on this.
Gotcha.
We're not making huge amounts of money on this. It's because I want to play this. So as soon as they are making a thing that I want to play more than I want to play Liberation, I don't need to spend my time on this anymore. I've already got the thing.
Right.
I do think that's going to take them a while, but they certainly have the tools and the people to do it. So it
Sure.
will absolutely get there, but we've got a bit of a head start.
Yeah. In the meantime, this is what you guys got.
Precisely, yeah. And I'm very much looking forward to them doing that. And even while that's still in development, they are going to have to make some changes that will just improve Liberation, because they're going
Sure.
to need to improve some of that AI autonomy that I was talking about. They're going to run
Right.
into all the same problems that we do.
I honestly cannot wait until the AI is better.
Yeah.
And I know that, speaking with, we interviewed Nine Line. He was actually, what did he say? He said something, and I'm going to paraphrase, something along the lines of like that Nick Gray was actually, I don't know that it was floored, but he didn't understand that we all thought the AI was not good.
Yeah, no, I do remember that part of the interview.
I forget the exact wording.
It was some very negative adjective used to
Yes.
describe the AI, and they rightly were upset by that, because they do put in a lot of effort. And it's by no means an easy problem to solve. Like, I understand why this is not done. It's hard.
Yes.
So I've been saying that the AI is a huge limiting factor all this time, but I by no means think this is like a hey ED, why haven't you done this? Like, I get it.
Right. Yeah, in my own career of software engineering, I've dabbled, and it's not a fun project. I wouldn't want to do it. AI in general is tough.
Yeah, it's hard, and doing it without ruining FPS is even harder.
That was actually one of the things that I kind of switched over. I used to do the YouTube stuff, and I don't have time for it anymore. So I've switched over to just live streaming stuff, and we explored some of the stuff that the AI does, in particular the flight model, which has always kind of been that UFO experience. And we would try. I remember one stream we were trying to do exactly what the AI did, based on recordings in TACView, and we couldn't get there at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the flight model is doing, but I'd imagine if they allowed the flight model for every AI unit to use, what the players use, the CPU would just go through the roof. And I think that's something that nobody takes into consideration when they think about how the AI is.
I think AI uses the simplified flight model for all the...
I don't even think they use that. I think they maybe to some degree, but some of the stuff that was occurring when we were doing the testing was, it's just impossible, even with the simplified stuff. But maybe that's the base, and maybe they've done something else. But it was very strange. So let's talk about, do you guys have any foreseeable plans to try to get things with Liberation working easier or better for multiplayer? And when I say multiplayer, I don't mean co-op. I mean like PvP, allow PvP or set up on red versus blue and things of that nature.
Near-term plans, no. We really, really often talk about we need to just scrap our entire UI and replace it. And that's a blocker to doing much of that, I think. The framework that we use is hard to work with. It's an old framework, and it hasn't modernized as quickly as if you do any web development like React or any of that. It's nowhere near as easy to use.
The new map system you guys have is like leaps and bounds better than what you were using before, though.
Yes, because that's a web view.
Right. You were using some Python thing before, right?
Yeah, it used to just be Qt, and we would draw an image and we draw lines on top of it, and it's now it's just a web page embedded in there that goes and talks to a
always
service.
Better.
Gets all the data from ArcGIS, and we use some off-the-shelf tools to just draw on top of that. It's way easier to work with, even having to go between the two systems. It's still a lot easier, and it works better, and it looks nicer. And
it's way better.
yes, the old maps were actually screenshots from the mission editor stitched together.
Right.
So,
yeah, now you guys have the satellite view. It does look way cooler.
Yeah, and you can zoom in a lot further, and that means that one of the things we want to do but haven't found the time yet, if you go and zoom in, you only see the group unit, but it'd be really cool if after a certain zoom level it breaks that up and you can see the individual units of the group.
Right.
So you could see, here's the track radar, here's the search radar, here's a launcher, here's just a truck.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, and it'd
be really cool if you guys could make like brief images of like satellite footage.
Yeah.
That's probably a lot of work, though. I'd imagine.
Yeah. So the trouble becomes the map that we get from ArcGIS. You know, it's from some year. It's recent-ish, but
Right.
DCS is a different time period, and the satellite map isn't going to have the units that we're placing. So there might be a city where there isn't one.
That's cool. Did you have something, Baltic?
Yeah, but I just wanted to. We started talking about multiplayer. I understand this is both single and multiplayer. And my question is, can you? I mean, if you started in multiplayer, let's say with 3 friends, do you have to be constantly with them all the time? You can switch between missions, play one single, then with 2 guys, then with 3 guys, etc.
Yeah, you can pretty much decide how many people are going to be present every round.
Yeah.
It got a little bit easier. There's some quirks to it, but you actually have specific pilots as of 4.0, I think is when that happened. Maybe that was 3.
I think it was 3.
Okay. But you can create a pilot for yourself, and you will then be assigning that pilot to a jet, as opposed to the previous system where you just say, I would like
super cool.
2 players in this flight. And you can, if someone's not going to be there, you can send that pilot on leave, and then they won't get assigned to missions automatically. Which is the thing that we sort of glossed over. Most of this system will run itself if you don't actually want to be involved in the planning. You can start a campaign and click go, and it'll generate a mission. You don't actually need to be involved in any of the campaign, in any of the theater strategy.
And I exactly to that point, I a little bit self-promotion here, but I've been running usually a couple times a week on stream. We're doing like a community campaign where anybody can join, anybody from my community can join, anybody who comes see the live stream can get the information for the server, and while we're playing, while I'm live, can jump in and help out. And one of the things that I do is I set up all of the pilots to be players. So there's no aircraft that would be considered driven by AI on blue. And then I hit next and to go to the next day to advance. And it schedules all the flights. It does everything. It does all this possible seed, strike missions, casts, etc. And aside from small editing where I just want to include more ships for people who want to play those roles, everything's pretty much done for me, which has been really nice. And I'm able to pump out a couple of those every week, which is really awesome, because a lot of people have been turning up to play these. We get like 20 to 30 people on the server every single time I run one, which is fantastic. So hats off to you guys for implementing that stuff, because it made my life a lot easier. Because I think prior to 3.0, you didn't have the pilot thing, and I had to go in and manually edit every single one of those flights to be a player flight, which was gruesome because it's like 80 plus planes.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of work. And customizing loadouts and stuff is also work. You should probably check out the UOAF squadron built a project that they call Tauntaun, which will take. Oh, you've heard of it?
I've used it.
Okay, that's
the web UI.
That's fantastic. It'll take the mission that we generate, and you can go in and tweak. And it's then actually a cooperative UI. You can have everyone log in and tweak their own loadouts and adjust their own flight plans. And
that's
the version I saw is several months old, so it probably has even more features than that at this point. But then you just hit go. So
that's all really cool, and I actually want to use that more. The downside is to what I'm doing. It's nobody's assigned a specific flight. It's you jump on, everything's up for grabs.
Right.
Do what you want to do. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like most of the people don't even do the assignment they've been given. They jump in an F-18. It might be strike, but they need to go seed or they want to provide bar cap, and they just do that.
I see.
I kind of just let it be because it's more just to have community interaction, fun for everybody. Not so much, you get enough people on a mission, you're gonna advance.
Yeah.
That's how I've found it to work. You get a mission set up, and it's set up for 30 flights, and 30 actual players jump on, and everybody's on simple radio, and we all just say, okay, what do we need? I need more cap up here. Okay, well, somebody get in the cap plane and jump up there. It ends up working out really well. So,
Yeah.
and the missions are like 3 hours long. So
Yeah. The missions get a little funny after about an hour of length.
they do.
The OP4 planning, if you haven't tweaked that, can get a little sparse.
I was actually going to ask you, is there something I can do to fix that?
Not
Because I set the
really.
mission length time to 3 hours because there's an actual slider in there that lets you say, do you want it to be about 1, 2, or 3 hours, right?
Correct, and you can adjust the mission length. That doesn't cause any additional missions to get planned. It just changes how the takeoff times get staggered.
Ah, okay.
So if
Interesting.
if OP4 only has 30 planes, they're still only going to send at most 30 planes.
I gotcha.
Extending the mission length won't change that. So you can give them a higher budget, and that'll give them more to work with. But at a certain point, the airfields are full, and once the airfields are full, they can't buy any more planes, so they can't plan any more missions, and you just gotta cut your mission off at that point and cycle the turn.
I see. Yeah, we end up getting hit really hard with cap at first. Their cap at first, and then once we spend about an hour thinning that out, then it's like everybody just joins, dead or seed or strike, and then we're pretty much left alone.
Yeah. One of the I don't want to say problems, I guess differences in playing in that style is that you miss out on a lot of what Liberation does. At least for me, one of the things I like most about it is I have a damn flight plan. There's so many other missions. It's just like, I don't know, go do your thing. You don't have any waypoints.
Yeah. Well, everybody still has that, and they can. I guess what my point is, they can jump in the plane and they can choose to do what's there, or they can do whatever they want.
And if you're coordinating with other players, the target times in your kneeboard don't matter as much. You can talk to the other player and coordinate.
Exactly.
Having the actual flight plan of, hey, show up at this time, make sure the weapons are on the target at this point.
Right.
So
That's
that you
all
can
really
coordinate
fun.
with the AI, as best as they can.
I find that's really fun in single player, but in multiplayer, it's really hard to rely on people to be time on target.
Yeah. Well, it's hard, especially in a lot of the jets that don't have the tools to help you be on time, or like the F-18 does it. The A-10 can do it. The F-16 will eventually be able to do it, but not as currently implemented. And in older jets, like, it's just, make sure you're going the speed that it says on the kneeboard, and make sure you're at the right altitude. And
Right.
From my experience with the AI, it's not that easy sometimes to make them be on target at a specific time. On waypoint,
No,
yes,
it's
but on
not.
target, no.
Yeah, because there's no input for that. You can't say, make sure the weapon hits the target at this time. There's
Exactly.
like, you give them an IP, and you hope that the time of fall is going to be right, and that's all you got.
Or they won't start making circles, like 3 circles before attacking or something like that. They tend to do it as well.
Is there a way for people to get in contact with you guys, for bug fixes or feature requests? Like, what's the best way that you guys find works for you?
For bug fixes and feature requests, GitHub. Everything else, we have a Discord, but as you can imagine, it's a pretty horrible archive. So it gets lost if it doesn't
I think
get filed.
my feature requests have gotten lost there.
If they didn't get filed, yes, that's very, very likely. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Please file it, but you can skip that and just go straight to filing.
I'll have to go back and look at what I said, because I know one of the things that I really want is the ability to edit, specifically for co-op purposes, to edit everybody's radios from the UI and then have it as a standard across the entire campaign.
Yeah, we've had that request before. In fact, I think someone is working on it at the moment. It's
awesome.
a thing that people want when they're playing with their large squadron.
Yep.
But all the radio code was written by me, and I don't play in a large squadron. It's me and a couple friends at most. So like the auto allocation works fine.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably just, if they're playing co-op, you just jump
Yeah.
on Discord or something. You don't actually have to use the radio, the in-game radio.
On that point, though, what I assume there's just a small tweak that could be made to auto allocation that would solve your problems. Like, are you looking for package channels and a coalition-wide channel, or?
I'm looking for like a definition of 3 channels. Yeah, like I want, like guard and air-to-air and air-to-ground and traffic. Like just 4 main channels for people to jump on and co-op with, what they're working on and not get clobbered by other people. Because right now what happens is, when we first started, I said, okay, everybody jump on 269 for guard. And then everybody's making traffic calls and the air-to-air flight is talking between. And it's like, okay, now we need to split it up. So then you make a couple more channels. Like traffic's on this channel. But the problem is, since it's not in the kneeboard, not everybody knows where to be. It would just be a lot easier if like it was put on the kneeboard. Here's the 4 channels for these groups, and that's it.
I'm confused because we already are putting traffic channels and not package channels, but flight level channels on the kneeboard.
Where's the definition? Like, how do I change them?
Why change them, I guess, is my question.
Because I always want to use the same ones. Yeah, maybe it's just personal preference. I always want to use specific channels.
Yeah, there are definitely other people that have asked for this. I've never needed that myself, but that's fortunately not the only guiding factor here. And other people are interested in this, and a developer is interested in this, so it's getting worked on.
Gotcha.
But
cool. I look forward to that for sure.
What you were saying earlier about it being great to just be able to launch it and not have to do any planning, you'll very much like the next version because it gets way better at the auto planning.
Oh, good.
It'll, as you've seen, like it's going to plan every single deed package in range. It's going to then plan every single BAI in range, and then so on and so on. It's going to actually be a lot more focused and try to plan things to best capture the base. And it's only going to plan the deed that it needs to.
When do you think that's going to be out? And the only reason I'm asking this, and you don't have to commit to anything, but the only reason I'm asking is I don't want to start a campaign and then that comes out and I got to start another campaign.
Yeah, that's in 5.0, which we have no timeline on. There's going to be a 4.1 soonish to add things like the F-16 JSOW and Mariana's support and some other stuff, and that should be very soon.
Are those compatible? Are you guys making saves compatible between major versions, or is it just if there's a version change? I know you guys had made some attempt to try to help that, but it was originally it was every new version needed a new save file, so you had to start a new campaign if you wanted to use that version.
Previously, it was any minor version break required a new game. We switched that to follow Semver, and so now it's every major version is by definition a save compat break. If we don't have to break save compat for whatever it is we're working on, then it becomes a minor version instead. So 4.1 and 4.0 saves are compatible.
That explains why 3.0 and then 4.0 like 2 weeks later happened.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. There's some parts of Liberation that do depend on the exact names of the units that get used in DCS. So every time ED changes and improves a name for a tank, it actually breaks our save compat. We've fortunately decoupled from all that with 4.0. And I say nice. I mean almost all. I think like our SAM generation and our ships are still subject to that. But
gotcha.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question.
Did you have something,
I should
Baltic?
probably have asked right at the beginning, which is how many people are there working on it on your side in total? How many devs?
That's a hard number to pin down. Right now, we've probably got 5 or 6 people active. For a lot of the project's history, it was 2. Some people are more active than others. Some people are going to send a patch a week. Some people are going to send 100. So there's a lot of variance, but it's in all we've probably had 30 plus contributors.
Oh, that's good.
It's just the number that are active at any given time varies and fluctuates a lot as does everyone's availability, because it's a volunteer project. Like it's our nights and weekends going into this, so you can only commit what you can commit.
And how can people show their appreciation then? I mean, the Patreon or PayPal? I don't know if there's any way to do that.
There's a Patreon. That's one way. It helps us. Particularly, it'll buy us the modules that we need to test the new features. Is how most of that gets spent.
I'm looking that up right now. Okay, so it's the Copa one.
Yes. It should be on the front page of our GitHub.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to get that link so that we could provide
Speaking
it as
about
well.
links, I think, sorry, Java, so just one more thing. I'll post it as well, because the only thing I really knew about the Liberation is what I read on MadSpike review. So I think we should link that too for people who want to get a nice segue into the whole project, because I think that article was very good.
It was, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. It unfortunately came out right before a major overhaul of the UI, so some of the advice is a little out of date, but it is still a very, very good introduction to what Liberation is. They did an excellent job writing that.
I haven't seen that one. You have to send that to me. Also.
Yeah, I will.
Haven't you done your own one of those?
I did, yeah. I have one, but it's way out of date now. I think I did it during 2.0 something or 2.
Yeah, I think I
something.
watched that.
There's
It
been
has
a
been
lot
long
of new
time.
features. You guys do things faster than I can keep up. Well, the problem is that I don't move to the next version because I'm in the middle of a campaign.
We try not to break it when we can, but
It's
yeah,
tough.
and at a certain point, like, yes, we could do the work to make sure that nothing ever breaks compat, but it would slow us down a
Yeah.
ton. We would be nowhere
Yeah.
near where we are right now, and it would, it would discourage people from working on it because it makes everything you do a lot harder. And if it takes you 100
Sure.
hours to do something small, you're not going to spend your free time on that.
Yeah, and then it becomes harder
Exactly.
to maintain.
Yeah, and it can hide bugs. We have, because save compatibility is, I have this thing and I need to infer what would have been done in a newer game to add this new feature, and you have to start injecting properties into the game that weren't there, which means that you don't know if you didn't set it up right the first time, since there's fallback behavior to fill in that data. I uncover bugs introduced by the save compat somewhat frequently.
What if people wanted to get involved with the project? What are some of the talents that you would suggest they have, or what are you guys looking for if you guys are looking for somebody who knows how to do something?
I would love for someone to have the drive to go and actually replace the UI like we were talking about. So it's pretty much web UI work, but it's also the back end as well, because we would. It's all written in Python currently, aside from the bits of the UI that are JavaScript. And that's kind of a hard requirement because we lean on a project called PyDCS really, really heavily, that does the actual MIS file generation. So we pretty much can't get away from Python because of that. So we would need to have.
I'm a C# developer, so I got.
Oh yeah, that's way better. Python's pretty good, but there are certainly better tools.
It has its
exactly,
purposes.
and it's gotten a lot better.
All right. Well, if anybody listening is a web developer who knows Python,
and wants to commit
wants to
a
contribute.
massive amount of work to decoupling these two
For
things,
free,
it's we all have a pretty good idea of what would need to be done. It's just a lot of work, and it can't be done piecemeal.
Yeah. That would be hard, and to keep that up to date with everything going on is probably a pain too, right? If it's going to take you months to build it, and in those months you come out with multiple versions with new features, and that's
yeah. But for more realistic things, any general programming experience is all you really need to get started on the core development. Like I just said, it's written in Python, so that certainly helps. But we have plenty of people that had never written a line of Python before they started working on Liberation, and they do just fine. I got to point out all the pitfalls that it's going to leave for you in the code review, but that's why we do code review. I think one of the other things that'd be great would be someone that is interested in doing some of the Lua work. We kind of don't do a ton because it's a lot harder to test, for one, because you have to let the mission play. So it takes a lot longer to actually test anything.
So speaking of Lua, are there any other, I don't want to call them frameworks, APIs, scripts that you guys want to implement from third party? You got the Skynet one, you guys have the C130, you have what's the other one? You have
damage. There's the extremely out of date version of the JTAC autolays that we need to replace with CTLD. The early warning thing.
Oh yeah,
the same one.
Yep.
Not actually the same one. I think the Through the Inferno folks have actually tweaked it pretty heavily. but similar
Okay.
to what's there.
Is there anything you guys want to add that somebody could help with? Or
Moose often comes up. It can do some really cool things. The trouble that I suspect we will have is that Moose will take a lot of the control out of our hands, and we do need to be able to guarantee that whatever's going to happen in the mission is roughly what you planned. And I think a lot changes based on whether you're using Moose or not. Like they have a really cool AI cap dispatch.
right.
It works extremely well. I've used it in some smaller missions and was very impressed with it, but I worry that it makes the AI not do as told in the flight
Right.
planner. So it,
Well, they already don't sometimes, so maybe it won't be
yeah,
so bad.
that's sort of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think AI cap drives me nuts. Maybe it's not even the cap. I think it's the placement of cap drives me nuts sometimes.
Well, that's because the commit decisions are,
Oh, I see
yeah,
what you're saying. So that because they would go 20 miles and then 20 miles
yeah.
and 20 miles.
They
I see.
there's only one real number that we can tweak, and that is the engagement distance. So if we want them to engage things within 50 nautical miles of them, that means that we have to make sure that
Hmm.
that 50 nautical miles is not overlapping an enemy airbase, because it's a defensive mission. It's not a sweep. It's a
Right.
cap. If it,
I see.
part of its job is just to be there and not do anything. Like that,
Yeah, you just
yeah,
control
that is a
airspace is all you're
successful
trying to
bar
do.
cap mission. Did the enemy get through? No. Great, you did your
Right.
job. Did you shoot anything down? Doesn't
Right.
matter. It's just
Right.
a deterrent.
Right. Yeah, I think what I've had to do more recent is set up more tar cap missions
Yeah.
to ensure that that the air threat is
Yeah.
taken care of
But
beforehand.
if you go in and look at the actual, whenever you click on a bar cap mission, it'll show you the commit range, and you'll see the commit range
Yep.
goes right up to the enemy territory and not a bit further. So that is why
Right.
those are where they are, is just because if that overlapped at all, they would suddenly become a sweep, and then they wouldn't be doing their job, because they would either not be there to defend whatever they're supposed to be defending, or they'd be out of ammo.
Is the I'm just going to use 20 as the range, but is the 20 nautical mile engagement range? Is it when let's say they're flying between two waypoints and they see a target and they go attack that target. If there's nobody else in that, do they resume?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. But that's sort of the trick there, is you want them to be able to go and attack anything within 50
Hmm.
nautical miles or whatever, but you want them to be a bit intelligent about how they do it. You don't want them to be engaging the enemy's bar cap. You want them to be engaging something that looks like it's about to attack,
Right.
and that's just not a knob that we have,
Yeah, it's
as
difficult.
far as I can
Exactly.
tell. I absolutely am no expert in the mission editor, so
I think another cool feature, and I can certainly write this up and stick it on your GitHub in case just to follow the proper procedure as you kind of alluded to before, so it doesn't get forgotten. But I think it'd be really cool if you guys had like right now, there's literally no reason to attack a factory or destroy a SAM site, or you can cripple it but not totally destroy it. Because once you capture that base, if it's not destroyed, you get it. Am I right there?
that's correct.
Yeah. It seems to me that it would be cooler if you destroyed it, because you can't repair it. Like you can't repair an ammo depot once it's destroyed and you capture the base, right?
Correct.
It would be really cool if, like, over time you built up those kinds of objects at bases you captured. So like maybe in like 4 turns you get an ammo depot, or give a reason to destroy those objects. Because I don't know, for me, I'm like, when we play these campaigns, I'm like, don't attack the ammo depot, I want that. Don't attack, you know what I mean? Like there's just no reason. Or you cripple a SAM, like I give an S300 site, I cripple the track radar so it can't shoot at me, and then I did capture the airfield. Now I get it, and I can repair the S300 site, and I can use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be I think a lot cooler if there was a reason to actually destroy it. But maybe that's just personal preference. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I've been playing.
A lot of it is personal preference, because there
Mhm.
is a trade-off there. Like, is it worth it to you to forego those future resources at
Mhm.
the to make your life easier right now? And I actually go after those targets a lot.
Do you?
Especially like for strikes, the backline targets definitely. Taking out backline cash generators is a pretty easy choice, and I will definitely go after the frontline ammo depots if the enemy has an advantage.
Interesting.
And the new auto planner is going to be a lot smarter about doing that as well. So it'll try to take out ammo depots if I forget exactly what it is. I think it's if the enemy has more than 50% of your maximum capacity or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it'll do some work to try to figure out, am I evening the playing field by doing this, or am I just screwing myself over for later?
Interesting.
And Op 4 is going to do it against you too, so you got to actually start protecting these things.
Right. I have to look into that, because I always just found if I didn't do it and captured the airfield, it just made my life easier every time afterwards. But
yeah, like I said, it's a trade-off, and there are it's a pretty common request to be able to repair them, and I think the plan that maybe has won me over on doing that is having it be a not instant thing, because right now all the repairs.
That's what I was
instant.
saying. Like, if it just took turns, that would be cool. Or even if you could just say, like, at this airfield, I want there to be an ammo depot, and you guys just spawned one randomly. Obviously you'd have to set up something in the mission editor, but
yes.
You could request, hey, we want to build an ammo depot here, and let's say it costs more. Let's say you never repaired, but it cost a lot of money up front to build one. But the end goal is that over time you obviously make those funds back because of it. I feel like that would be much easier. Or like you get their ammo depot, but it's never yours. So there's a reason to destroy it rather than keep it around. I don't know.
Yeah, there's certainly room for improvement in this area, because a lot of people have exactly your opinion of there's no point in attacking these. I disagree. I go after them all the time, but there's a trade-off involved, and a lot of people think it's never worth taking. So there's
Gotcha.
certainly something to change there.
Well, I'll have to look for I'll have to thumbs up one of the GitHub things then.
Yeah, I think there's two related here. There's the let me repair them, and there's a mission type for actually constructing things like SAMs, and that could also apply to buildings if that were a thing where it doesn't just happen. Like, you have to actually bring some materials over there.
It would be really cool if, like, the stuff that you could construct didn't take out of the money that you currently have, but the money that you gain per turn. Since if you're gaining 50 million per turn and you want to construct an ammo depot, well, you're going to lose 20 million per turn for 2 turns. You know what I mean? Like, that would be awesome, because that's like a big decision factor, is do I have enough funds to keep going, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I personally am not actually a huge fan of our cash-based system in the game right now. I think, they're all currencies at some level or another, but I think the fact that they all pull from one pool is not the greatest. Specifically, like air versus ground units, the plane's always the better choice for the mission. As soon as you have enough ground units to not lose. And one of the plans here was we added factories back in 3.0, and one of the plans that I wanted to do with that I haven't done, because we're still thinking through the balance, would be instead of having factories just be a place that you can buy them, it would be a place that produced them at a fixed rate per turn.
Oh, that's cool.
So, like, every turn this produces 12 tanks or something, and no changing that. That is the rate. You get that. Use them wisely.
That's interesting.
There's a lot of balance tweaks to think about there.
Yeah, because if you get that wrong, and the missions are unplayable, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the exact number there obviously is just a tweakable setting in the game. But
I see. I gotcha. You leave it up to the player.
Yeah, but it's the figuring out how that interacts with the other parts of the economy that wouldn't be on a new system like that. Like, what do we do with aircrafts? Do we have them also come from factories? Yeah, or maybe they come in from out of theater at a fixed rate, or maybe we quit tracking planes altogether and it's only a matter of pilot replacement. So there's ideas, but we haven't solidified anything. And a lot of people do like the cash system. There's some strong proponents of that. So
yeah, I usually just for the dynamic campaign that I run for the community, I usually just give myself a bunch of money, because I don't really want to manage the actual war. Just looking to have fun with some friends. So that's cool. I dig it. I think the more stuff you can add to make. I mean, I hate micromanaging stuff, but as long as you guys make it so that that stuff exists for people who want to use it, and for people who don't, it kind of manages itself. That's totally fine with me.
Fortunately, Red has no one playing as them, so every system needs to be able to run automatically.
Sure. Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
I also hate micromanagement, so if I'm making it, I'm giving it an auto switch because I don't want to do it either.
I approve. Well, this has been awesome, man. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask, Baltic?
No, I mean, it sounds really amazing. I'll need to try it. Maybe I'll wait for this next version, and I'll definitely get into it. Maybe I'll refresh my multiplayer skills finally. It's something I'm missing a lot. I don't have time for multiplayer, and that might be a nice way to get back into it at some point. So thanks a lot. It's been very good.
It makes the co-op experience really, really fun. Not something that I usually would do, but this has definitely turned my head another direction for that.
Yeah,
Dan, I want to thank you for. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm obviously biased, but it's certainly the mission that I enjoy the most. There's plenty of other good ones out there. I've sunk tons of time into like Georgia at War and Through the Inferno, but I like that I get a flight plan generated and an actual task to do as opposed to the free form.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a big appeal for me too. Dan, I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, and a lot of good information for Liberation. And I look forward to future versions of it for sure. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. This is fun. I think we had some other questions in the channel.
I think I covered them all.
I know we alluded to many.
I think there was one from Fish about how to get the ideas
I
for
missed that
campaigns. One. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you using real historical campaigns as a source, or technical realism or authenticity? Yeah.
So the campaigns are contributed by a much larger number of people than the core development team that I've mostly been talking about. When I said 6, that doesn't include all of the people that are sending us campaigns, which adds a lot. Actually, most of our campaigns are not from the core dev team at this point.
Gotcha.
And many of those do. Some of them even mirror an exact conflict, like the 1982 Lebanon War. I think is one of the campaigns, and it's as close as possible matched to that scenario.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I've played that one. I don't know. I've tried a bunch of them. At this point, they all are a blur.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's
I think
cool.
The other one that we touched on a little bit was the one from Starfire, asking about what features would help us. The main answer there is on the front page of our GitHub is a list of bugs that are the things that I think are holding us back the most. And so please go to those bugs and give them a +1 or subscribe, whatever it is.
These are bugs that you've listed for ED to fix.
Yes,
Gotcha.
First and foremost is escort behavior. It's the thing that Liberation does worse than any other part of the scenario. I think is just trying to get the escorts to do the right thing. The escort task that's in the game on paper sounds perfect, but the moment that the flight that they are escorting goes to do a task like drop a bomb, they just loiter off in a seemingly random direction. So, which is
not very useful.
It kind of like the exact thing that they should do in that situation is kind of hard to nail down. Like, do they stay in the general area? Do they follow exactly through the bombing pattern? Do they what do they do? There's some open questions there, and Edie has said yes, we believe this is a good feature request, but it needs to get done.
Gotcha.
I have one more question. Helicopters, are they also included there? Because we will be talking about airplanes all the time.
Yeah, I only fly planes mostly, so my bias leaking through there. Helicopters are there. We don't do as good of a job with helicopter campaigns just because they require a more constrained environment size-wise, and we don't do a great job laying out flight plans in a smaller area. That improves in the next version, but only to an extent. Yeah.
Are you guys going to add, or you have plans to add Marianas?
It's already done in the preview builds. There's not a lot we can actually do with Marianas.
Yeah, it's very small.
Because we don't have naval invasions yet. It's often requested. I think Koba was working on it, but it's not done. And without naval invasions, there's just not a lot we can do with that map. You can have a bombing campaign where you take off from a carrier and just take out targets on the island, but most of our bread and butter is front line of troops moving and taking bases, and you can't really do that in that map.
Gotcha.
Which is really too bad because it's beautiful. I I really want to fly on that map more, but
we're recording this on the 25th of July, and I'm sad to say I haven't even tried it yet.
oh, you really should. A day of, I at least took off an F-16 from the main air base there and just flew around to look at it. It's something.
Concur. It's really nice. It's good looking.
It is.
So I do agree that mission wise or campaign wise, it's difficult to build something that would really make a lot of sense at this stage, without naval invasions, etc. Yeah, but it's nice.
Cool. All right. Well, again, I want to thank you. Again, I get a little premature on the last one there, but thanks again for joining us today and talking about liberation. And you guys are doing an excellent job. You guys are making progress faster than I ever expected. And to some degree, I hate that because I want to use new versions, but can't. But just keep it going because you guys keep adding really cool stuff, and I think the community really appreciates it.
Thanks. All of us working on it are playing it as well, so
That's good to hear.
We understand a lot of the frustrations and the joys that come from it.
Yeah, we'll just deal with it. It's fine. Just tell everybody to suck it up.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening, and we're going to get out of here. See you guys next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.